Welcome back to The Positive Perspective. I'm your host, Kirsten Turner, and I have got an episode for you today. I am so excited to introduce our guest speaker. Dan Hearn is with us today. Dan is a former paramedic who, after being diagnosed with CPTSD, transformed into a coach, trainer, and mentor. A decorated first responder, he now shares evidence-based tools to help others, especially first responders, overcome adversity, build resilience, and find balance. Welcome, Dan.
So grateful to be here. Thanks, Kirsten.
It's great to have you here. Your journey from first responder to essentially, we'll call it sort of mental health coach, maybe you can even describe that better for us, is fascinating. What was the turning point that led you to pursue coaching?
Yeah, the turning point, thank you for the question. Yeah, the turning point came for me in 2021 with my diagnosis. I'd been a paramedic for 10 years. And at that point in time, things were starting to come off the rails. The job became really difficult to navigate. There were a lot of challenges at home. And I wasn't actually sure what was going on with me, and I thought I had the skills to be able to navigate the challenges that were happening, but I realized that over time that my nervous system was becoming increasingly overwhelmed, and it was more difficult to do the job. And then COVID hit, and then everything changed. So
Yeah.
kind of the wheels came off the bus, and it was through that journey, that diagnosis of CPTSD, that I reached this point in my life where I really needed to like reinvent myself. And I realized that, my career as a medic was essentially over, and I needed to find ways of healing a lot of trauma that had occurred like throughout the course of my life.
Yeah.
And then as a medic,
I actually have
it's,
two questions for you, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
certainly.
Just to back up for anybody's listening to, one, what is CPTSD? Like, if you could describe that just for anybody who's not aware.
Certainly.
And then I'm
Yeah.
also curious about your training as a paramedic, because I would imagine that you probably had more insights as a paramedic into mental health and all of that than the average person does too. So I'm even just sort of curious about what you knew and how it helped and maybe where it fell short. And I'm just have some curiosity around that as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Well, CPTSD stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And the definition is basically like a set of symptoms that are ongoing past a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
And so it's complex because it includes not just the events or the accumulated trauma that you experience in the course of your profession, but in your personal life as well.
Right.
So there were a lot of things that were going on that were building up. And so, in terms of the paramedic training, we're given a lot of training before we start our career in terms of the skill sets that we need to successfully navigate our careers and help people in crisis, whether it's medical or trauma.
Mhm.
So we're given a lot of training in that area, but sadly, right across the board for first responders, there's a lack of training in dealing with like the accumulated stress and trauma that you experience, and the mental health issues that are to some degree inevitable
Yeah.
in the profession. And so that was something that I became acutely aware of. Like, we're always dealing with. It seems that in the majority of the calls, especially in and around the COVID area, that there was a significant mental health component to the calls and to the patients that we were dealing with.
Mhm.
And so, but we weren't really given a skill set ourselves on how to navigate this, and how to, it was just assumed that
Yeah.
you would learn how to do this over time, or you would, there are different philosophies, like a Stoic philosophy, or you develop a detachment from,
Or
you
there's
stay
just so
professional,
much
but
going on, like,
there's so
too.
much going
Yeah,
on.
like, how do you even training on that would probably I don't even know what that could have or would have looked like, and I would imagine with COVID happening, nobody was really prepared for that level of what would have happened, like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It was a complete game changer, COVID. Like, it really illustrated, I think, that how much of issues are surrounded by mental health as
yeah,
a major component of, our own physical, mental, and emotional health. So, yeah, it really came it became like the elephant in the room. And it has been ever since. I think it's really illustrated, certainly in the first responder community, that there's a real need to address these issues before they become problems.
Yes. Yeah.
And statistically, today across the country, certainly across the province, you can see that anywhere between 10 and 30% of your frontline first responders are off on some kind of occupational stress injury.
Is that how
So,
high it is?
and
Yeah.
that's pretty significant when you've
Yeah.
got and if you don't have the safeguards in place to help people mitigate the challenges that they're dealing with, then it becomes a real big problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and but my involvement, I'm a manager with Boots on the Ground, which is a peer support organization for first responders that do an amazing job. But it's really illustrated, like in the past, since their establishment in 2018, that we've had over 4,000 calls now, and the calls are exponentially getting because there's such a need for,
Wow.
an outlet for people like just to connect to resources or just, talk out what they're going through.
Hmm.
So I think it's really, really important for people like to have at the college level or at the in-service training level, a skill, pay as much attention to mental health as learning the crucial aspects of your job,
Right.
because it's for some people, it's one event that causes this set of symptoms like post-traumatic stress disorder, and for others it's like this long slow accumulation of the shift after shift, call after call stress. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and we're seeing this more and more. Like it's a big challenge right now, but it seems like there are so many people are taking it seriously. They're starting to take it seriously at the management level and trying to bring. So it's kind of like an all hands on deck, but they're still struggling with this. And
Yeah.
there's still a lot of the old school thinking that what do you think the job was all about after all.
Right. Which
So
isn't helpful
no,
commentary
it's
at all.
not. It's
Yeah.
not at all for people
Yeah.
that are really struggling. And there are a lot of people. I have a lot of friends in this community that are either off like I was, or struggling every day, putting that uniform on and going out and serving the community. So
It's fascinating, Dan, because I think like I work with a lot of like just busy professionals, and there's a level of stress that comes with that. But what I've seen obviously is like behind the curtains, even in their own personal life. And I have like discovered like everybody is struggling with something. And either they are more aware of what they're struggling with or they're less aware, but it is impacting usually not just one aspect of their life, but multiple. And I'm like, these people that I support too, not saying that their profession isn't extremely important in what they do, but I'm like, there is another level with paramedics and first responders and what they see every single day. So I can only imagine like the emotional toll that that takes, and then coming home and supposed to be like a certain, but I'm like, reality and life and death is all very in your face, I would
mhm,
imagine. So
very much so.
it's just interesting to hear, you say that, and I'm kind of like looking at a lot of the people who I like, my clients and stuff, and I'm just like, they have a lot of responsibilities and a lot too, but I'm like, everybody just has so much going on. And a lot of the time we don't know really like the subconscious level what's playing a part, let alone the daily amount of responsibilities and how we're required or feel like we're supposed to show up in every single area of our life. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
Absolutely. We live in, you hear this all the time. It kind of like we're living in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
There's so much change and chaos and fear, globally that has an impact on all of us. And then you look at, the state of the country and the struggles that people are going through, the financial struggles, all the uncertainty, all the things that are going on in their personal lives and relationships. So it doesn't matter whether you're a stressed out executive or a stressed out firefighter, police officer, or paramedic, or just trying to keep your life together at home.
Yeah.
Stress has a universal impact on all of us, right? So we're dealing with the body and the body's response to stress, and
Yeah.
it's universal. So it's not that it differentiates between a paramedic or a business executive. It has the same impacts over time
Yeah.
because we're dealing with the nervous system, and that applies to everybody. So
Yes.
it's a matter. And when I really understood that, and when I got past this idea of the label of a diagnosis, that I wasn't just the accumulation of like a whole bunch of
Uh-huh.
trauma.
Yeah.
It had more to deal with my nervous system being out of balance and out of whack. And then when I really learned that, because that spoke to me as a paramedic, because I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And there are techniques and tools that you can use to shift yourself back into balance. And
Yeah.
that's what I discovered in my journey, in my PTSD journey, and coming out of it, and what I've learned through that journey, and the skills and the tools that I've learned have been really a game changer for me. And
And I
so,
would love to hear what those are in your journey. But I think, like, even just before we go there, my thought, oh, did I lose it? This happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I have so many ideas and stuff I want to talk about that I'm like, it'll come back to me. But I wanted to talk about, oh, the labeling.
mm,
It's an interesting thing when we label somebody. Like, I understand it's like a natural human thing that we want to do is,
yeah,
assign labels. And I'm like, I can see how it could be a good thing because you're like, it's a starting point for what, but a lot of the time what that label does is like, I have this thing. So it's okay for me to be this way because I have this. And I find that what I'm discovering is that it actually hurts people more than it serves them.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know what your experience with once you got labeled as that or found out that you have this thing, but it sounds like even you kind of alluded to it was like, well, no, like I looked at it differently as in like, okay, how do I solution for this? Not like I have this thing and this is just how I am now, which I think is what a lot of people walk away with, unfortunately.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm very kind of anti-label, because
Yeah,
everything that I've studied and learned and followed, even before my diagnosis, um, led me to the belief that we create our own reality.
same.
So, and it's a very convenient, and I don't want to take away from anybody that has been diagnosed with something like PTSD or ADHD or anything along those lines, anything, mentally health related or what have you.
Yeah.
But it can be a real sticking point. Like you said, you can get stuck in this place, and it makes, I think the label in a sense almost gives you a bit of a victim mentality that says,
Yeah.
you know what? And as a victim, we're not responsible for what happened to us as a victim. So, it's outside of our ability to deal with,
Outside of our control, and if
outside
something's
of our
outside of our
control.
control, we can't do anything about it. So we just have this thing that we've been told,
Yeah.
and that's it. And I think there's another side to it, and it sounds like that is what you discovered, which is maybe a good segue for you to talk to us about your journey,
Hmm.
and what helped you, and like sort of how did that come about? Because I know mine, and mine was very different, and I was not expecting it, not trying, and I was just sort of like had my own epiphany and kind of situation. So I would love to hear more about your story and about boots on the ground because I think that's an incredible thing that you've done. But let's maybe hear about your journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Um, getting, trying to step back into that mindset almost seems like a different person now,
Yeah,
because there was so much growth throughout that journey, and the journey was necessary. I look at it. You can't. I'm a firm believer that um, you can't determine the circumstances of your life. The things that happen to you.
yeah,
The events that you experience in your life are largely beyond your control. But what you do have control of is the narrative that you establish surrounding those circumstances. And if you can't change, you can't change the event. You can certainly change how you react to that event. Um, but that takes a lot of it takes a lot of one inner work. Kind of our I believe that our outer world, is created by our inner world.
hmm,
You know,
absolutely.
so absolutely, and um, so much of our experience is dictated by our subconscious mind, right?
Yeah,
And our subconscious mind is all the programs and that are running in the background 100% of the time.
hmm,
95% of what we do, how we act, what we believe, what we think is related to these, subconscious programs that were installed, from the last trimester of your birth to the first 7 years.
yep,
So we're dealing with these neurological patterns, and that became very apparent to me, It wasn't easy in my journey when the diagnosis. I pretty much lost everything. I lost my 26-year marriage, my
Mm.
career, my home, my finances, and I was starting all over again.
Yeah.
And I was in a very dark place for like 2 years straight.
Hmm.
And what happens is that your nervous system, or your autonomic nervous system, which is two branches, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic,
Yep.
right? So it's like the gas pedal is the sympathetic. That's the stress response. That's the fight or flight response. I lived there for 2 years straight.
Yeah,
And
it's a
and
lot.
we're not designed as human beings to be stuck in a sympathetic response state all the time. It
No.
breaks down everything,
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, physically. It has long-term impacts on your physical health for sure. I was diagnosed prior to going off with atrial fibrillation, which is
No idea what that is.
AFib is an irregular heartbeat.
Okay.
And if
Okay.
it's not corrected or it's not dealt with medically, it can lead to stroke and heart attack and what have you. But
Okay. Yeah.
what I didn't realize that was a direct result of the accumulation of the stress I'd been experiencing. So that was my nervous system. It was
It was
it
your
was jamming.
body trying to
Oh, it was
talk to you.
responding.
Yes. Yeah.
What you don't deal with deals with you eventually.
Yes, exactly.
So you can, for me, it's like, you're holding this beach ball of stress underwater, and you can only hold that beach ball underwater for so long before it comes popping up to the surface.
Yeah.
So it's how and so that journey, um, although it was in the moment, it was terrifying.
Mhm.
It lasted for a very long time. I had all some things about stress. One thing that stress does is it shuts down your cerebral cortex, the critical thinking part of your brain,
Yes.
right? Because when you're in that fight or flight survival response mechanism, you're not, um,
You
your
can't think.
nervous system says, now's not a time to think critically. Now's a time to survive. So it goes back to the primitive part of your brain,
Yes. It
which
also
is
limits your ability to see options and like
absolutely,
so you get in a very like it's this or it's that and that's all I my only options, which is unfortunately what I've understand what happens a lot with suicide. So
yeah,
they see no other option. It's
absolutely.
that or it's this.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, continue.
No, I agree. It's such a important distinction to understand that actually what's going on in your body when you're in that prolonged stress state. The
Yeah.
other thing that it does is it shuts down, basically shuts off your immune system. So there's all kinds of physiological things that are going on when you're stuck in this state, which
Mhm.
as a medic, I should have understood, but I didn't. I
Right.
couldn't make the connection that all the trauma that I was reliving like constantly um, was just a result of this nervous system that was really out of balance.
Why does that happen? It's an interesting thing because I think that's true for so many. We go to like a logical or we look at our external environment, but we never think that when the body's talking to us that it's a mental health thing. Like if you're driving home from work, I've used this example before and I find it so interesting. Is like if you have a really upset stomach, the first thing you think of isn't usually like what happened today that made me feel uncomfortable or stressed and now my stomach's the first thing is like what did I have for lunch, did I did I eat something bad, did I but it's like no, so much of what happens in the body is it's actually just trying to talk to you more about your experience and I'm like I don't know if we just get disconnected from our bodies and understanding and we become very logical or in our heads or and I don't it's an interesting thing. I'm curious what your opinion or take is on that.
Absolutely, it's so true. We stay stuck in our heads the majority of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we're trying to outthink our physiology or outthink our problems, and sometimes the mind isn't the tool for the job. There's a great
Yeah.
book by Dr. Vanderkolk called "The Body Keeps a Score."
Oh, great.
So
Okay.
it when you really understand at a deeper level, like the body, all cells have memory. All cells are responding to your environment. All cells are responding to your to your thoughts and your
Yeah.
beliefs and your emotions. And these traumas get stored. These mental and emotional blocks get stored physically in the body. And your body's always trying to alert you as to where you're at. But we're so conditioned to stay stuck here
Hmm.
that we're disconnected from what's going on. So we're attributing that stomach ache to like something else when your body's out. The gut brain is very, very, the more science that, has been imparted and studied about that, and lots of great books on the gut brain. But it's trying to tell you that something's out of balance here, that you
Yeah.
need to pay attention. So, but we're really good at, filtering out so much in our brains
Hmm.
that, you know, to actually change, to actually heal, to actually become, fully actualized and what have you, really have to start paying attention to what's going on. Self-awareness is a huge, huge piece about
Yeah.
where you're at any given moment. And the thing is that the one thing that I've discovered through my training is that emotions play a very, very huge part of like there's a communication that's going on between the heart and the brain. The heart's not a pump. It's so
Hmm.
much more. So
Yes.
this communication through the vagus nerve between the heart and the brain sending is like the emotional self-regulation part. And it really, when our emotions are out of balance or when we're dealing with depleting emotions like frustration or worry or anger or anxiety or depression, that communication gets really
Hmm.
dysregulated. And
Right.
so, and you can see that in the heart rate variability patterns, which is a really good indicator of, current and future health. So when that's dysregulated, that communication, it starts to have all these deeper impacts over prolonged periods of time. So emotions are a huge, huge driver. Like, for
Yes.
example, we have a magnetic field, right, that
Yep.
surrounds our body in 360 degrees, and it's measured by the heart's magnetic field. So the
Hmm.
heart's magnetic field can be measured using a tool called a magnetometer, and it measures out about 3 feet away from the body. I believe it goes much further.
Hmm.
But you compare that to the brain's magnetic field, where we're stuck most of the time,
Hmm.
only measures out about an inch
It's
from the body.
fascinating. It's so interesting.
So
Does this touch on the heart math piece?
very much so.
Okay, so what I want to do, because I really want to dig into that, but before we get there, I'm going to imagine for anybody who's listening and is in a really tough spot,
Mm.
you've been in that tough spot. And and we're sort of talking about how do you move on from that? Because I've had my own tough spot too, but I'm like, how did you go from feeling that way and being in that place and going through and learning all of this and figuring it out and starting a whole new world of what it is that you
Mhm.
do and picking yourself back up? How did that happen? How do you do that?
Well, Tony Robbins said people change one of two ways: inspiration or desperation.
Right.
And I at that point I was ready for change. I was suicidal every day. I recognized that wasn't an option for me. So I was starting off from rock bottom,
Hmm.
and and I was just fortunate enough to be exposed to people that I really admired, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I think are on the forefront of change in the globe. Um,
Yep.
Personal development, like spiritual, right across the board. So he was talking about heart math, and
Is that
I've
where you
heard
would recommend somebody start?
I you have to start from where you're at.
Yes.
So not everything is going to resonate with some people.
True.
Um, it's like you can take people to a breathwork session or a meditation session. Some people it'll resonate, they'll jump right in, and other people are like, no, this is just not for me.
Hmm.
So, but the beautiful part about heart math training, I found, is that you're dealing with the physiology. This is scientific, evidence based, and peer reviewed
Right.
training and studies that, over 500 peer reviewed studies. So, and tools and techniques that are practical and useful that you can use in the moment. So I was desperate to find anything. It's funny because prior to all these things happening, I was a seasoned meditator. I'd
Mm.
even gone on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I should
Yeah.
have been able to handle it. But the problem is, like we were discussing earlier, is that when your nervous system is overwhelmed
Yep.
and you're in survival mode and you're in constant survival mode, and here's the other thing about that is, unlike in our prehistoric days when it took like a saber-toothed tiger to chase you and you're in like this, okay, it's survival.
Yeah.
After that, you go right back into parasympathetic.
Yeah.
You go back into rest, relax, repair, rejuvenate. you know but with our hugely developed prefrontal cortexes now, our brains don't differentiate between what's real and what's not, what's a threat and what's a real threat and what's not a real threat.
Right.
So the brain responds as if everything is a threat. You know,
Yeah.
we have this developed brain that's always constantly looking, is this a threat for me? Is that a threat for me? So we can generate this physiological response of the nervous system just by thought alone. That's why you can be laying in your bed in the middle of the night and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're safe and you're warm and you're fed and
Yes.
and then you can go into a panic state,
Yeah.
um, just by thinking.
It's funny that you say this because I literally had this conversation with my two daughters the
Mm,
other night who were scared trying to fall asleep or scared to get out of bed in the morning. And so I literally had this conversation with them and said, at one point in history, humans lived in the woods and it was that fear actually was serving you. It was a
yeah,
good thing. It was trying to protect you. And it was an interesting to watch them kind of go, fear was protecting me. It's protecting me. I'm like, yeah, it's trying to help you, but you need to talk to it and say, I'm actually safe right now. Like,
that's right.
thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm okay. I'm in my bed. I have my warm blanket and my stuffies, and my mom and dad are right there. Like, you're safe. It's okay. And it was a really great way to see them shift. But it's true for us in any sort of situation, right? But I'm like, even with kids, it's like,
Oh yeah, and that's where it starts. You
yeah,
know, and that depending on whether that's not regulated or you're not given a different perspective, like people can get stuck there. Like Joe Dispenza said recently, like 70% of North Americans are stuck chronically with their foot on that gas pedal, which is
yeah,
sympathetic nervous. And over time, that shuts off your ability to relax and repair and heal yourself because your body needs to be there the majority of the time.
yep,
Our nervous systems are designed so that we only spend a little bit of time. We should own to deal with whatever threat is there and then to go back. In this world that we live in, under constant stress and stimulation,
yep.
we're stuck there. So
Do you want to know?
we need to retrain ourselves in how to get back into balance. And it's not as hard as people would think, you know. These
Yeah.
patterns that we've developed, and they're all subconscious, for some of us for decades,
Hmm.
but the tools are really fairly simple.
Hmm.
But like anything, you need to practice them on a day-to-day basis if you want to make a shift from whatever you're dealing with on the mental health side to bring yourself back into balance.
Yeah. So, in terms of somebody who's in a situation, they're potentially feeling depressed, they are losing things or have lost a lot,
Mm-hmm.
what kinds of things can we share with them? So, I think breath work is one that we would, that you could see if it's for you. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. What is there anything else that you would recommend, like on that journey, to just try something that they could try that might help them?
Absolutely. There's a combination. What works for me might not work for somebody else.
Yeah.
But like certainly breath work is tried and true. The science is there. Mindfulness, the science is there.
When you say
Mindfulness and
mindfulness,
meditation.
yeah, when you
Mindfulness
say
is
mindfulness, what do
huge.
you mean? Because I think it's at some point as coaches, we know what these words mean. We understand that, but I think there's a lot of people who just don't know. Like it just becomes a buzzword.
I will tell you what my interpretation of as a
Yes, yes,
mindfulness instructor. Mindfulness is present moment awareness without judgment
yes,
or labels. So
yes.
you're just accepting the present moment as it shows without giving some kind of background narrative to it or
Hmm.
finding yourself slipping into unconsciousness. So it's just this bringing yourself back to the present moment. Like how often do we drive from one place to another? You know, it might be an hour drive. It's a familiar drive for us. And we don't remember a moment on that drive because we're stuck in our head.
Or you wolf down your dinner or
Yeah,
your lunch,
without
and you don't even remember what
any,
it tastes like. You don't even know. Yep. Yes.
because you're stuck here and you're not in the present moment,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Like if you study all the teachers like Dr. Wayne Dyer and Eckhart Tolle and all
They're
these
great.
wonderful pioneers that are bringing us that are showing us this pathway that if we can connect to the present moment, rarely is there any problem in the present moment, right?
Yeah.
It's always this story about your past or the projection of the future and what that might look like for you, whether it's fearful or whether it's exciting, but you're not giving any attention to this present moment. So the
Yes.
more we're able to bring ourselves to the present moment, or the more we're able to bring us back to our breath, we're breathing 17,000 plus times a day anyway. If we can give a couple of minutes attention to that, the breath is kind of like the gateway. It's kind of like the gateway to the subconscious mind. It's a gateway to the body. It's a gateway to regulation of your nervous system. And it's really quite simple to like shift. And this shift can occur in the space of a few heartbeats or a few breaths. And
How
it's
does it work?
amazing to actually watch. I
Hmm.
have biofeedback technology that I use through HeartMath, where I can get into this coherent state. And I can actually see when, if I have a stress thought, it automatically reacts. But
Yeah.
if I turn my attention back to my breath, like literally within seconds, I can bring myself back into that parasympathetic state. So I'm retraining my nervous system to spend the majority of my time in this parasympathetic state.
Yes.
And because of that, that means I have capacity now. Like I have more energy in my system, because being in that stress response drains your internal battery very, very quickly. You know
Yes.
how many people get out of bed in the morning and by the time their feet hit the floor, they're already exhausted.
They're already stressed. Yeah. They're
They're
already like,
already
go back.
stressed. The
Yeah.
brain's kicking in. The fear response is in. They're stuck there. And now you've got to get through your entire day
Yeah.
and then come home and be a parent or a partner.
It's
What do
exhausting.
you have left to give?
So the one thing I will add to this for anybody who's listening, you're sort of like, okay, I get it. Like breathing can help me. But what we're trying to, I think, explain here is that if you're really stressed,
Hmm.
how are you breathing? Is it slow and deep breaths when you're stressed? No, it's quicker and it's faster.
It's
So
all
we're
upper
basically,
chest.
yeah, so we're basically saying that you can take control of your nervous system but through breath. And that's what breath work is. So if I'm breathing deeply and calmly, my body can't stay stressed. I'm telling myself that it's a calm situation. There's no saber-toothed tiger trying to eat me. There's no boss trying to eat me or fire me or whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely.
But you can also put yourself in a stressful state through breath work. So it works on both, which obviously is not the goal here. But if you're breathing really quickly and really fast, this is why everybody always says there's a reason why sayings exist, right? Take a deep breath. Like
Hmm.
how I think everybody in their life has heard that at one place, but there's way more to it than that. And this is the why we talk about breath work and why it helps and why I think Dan's, why you're recommending it as a place to explore and to start if you're in this situation. Because you can,
It's a great starting point. And we
yeah,
can
yeah,
only just, once again, we're working with our nervous system, and breath work has been, the science behind it. It just makes a lot of sense. And not only that, anecdotally, it was what changed my life, which really was a starting point to me climbing back out of that dark place I was in.
amazing.
I had been in talk therapy for 2 years, which is a top down approach, right? It's you're
Yeah,
thinking, you're not in your body, you're here.
yeah,
So, and like I said, sometimes, and I mean, it was very helpful, but it wasn't giving me what I needed to take the next step out of that.
yeah.
I could be stuck in talk therapy for the rest of my life if I want,
Mhm.
but I really needed something that in the moment was going to shift me. So
Yeah.
I started off with this introduction to breath work and the heart math training. And then because of that, because now, my baselines were set at 8 or 9 out of 10 on stress every day, like
Right.
nonstop. And that's not a good place to be. You can't sustain that for a long period of time,
No.
without breaking down. So
Yeah.
when I was able to apply, started, like, I was desperate. If somebody had told me to, you know, stand on one foot, with blindfold on in the middle of the road and hop backwards on one foot down, and that would help, I might have considered it.
Yeah.
I was kind of desperate for that. But what I realized, like within a short period of time, the breath work was like bringing my baseline of stress down to like a different level, where I
Same.
now had capacity to actually deal with the other challenges I had to deal with.
Yeah.
Because when you're overwhelmed and you're stressed, every little thing takes you over. So you can't handle anything.
No.
So when you're back into more of a balanced state, now you have capacity, your inner battery is fairly charged, so that you're able to deal with whatever challenges are going on. And you're like, oh, I'm on to something here.
Yeah.
So the more you strengthen this, the more you practice it, you're actually rewiring the neural pathways in your brain. So it's not the only thing, but I found that for myself that the heart math training, breath work, and I do a really unique form of breath work along with mindfulness and meditation, or what I call the transformational triad. That was
Mm-hmm.
the thing that really helped to bring me back into balance. And now that I'm able to, share what I learned with others, is just such a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with my connection with Boots on the Ground, which is a true honor to serve with that organization.
Yeah,
So,
can you tell us more about that? I would love to hear more about that.
yeah, Boots on the Ground is this incredible organization that was established in 2018 by a retired Peel detective, just a great man who recognized that there was this big gap in what police officers and first responders, between the resources that were available for them
Mm-hmm.
when they were dealing with mental health issues, which is an obvious byproduct of doing what you do on the
Of course.
job, right? And what you see and what you have to interact with every day. So they started off, it was a small, so basically it's a peer support line that runs 24/7, 365, fully anonymous. And it's for first responders, so police, fire, EMS, corrections, military, nurses, dispatchers, anybody in that frontline community who are struggling. And a lot of people, because of the stigma that's still associated with reaching out to like your own EAP or what have you, they're very reluctant to do this because they figure it's going to red flag them or something's going to happen, and now they're going to be under, you know,
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
and so that's more traumatizing. So boots on the ground, because we're all active or retired first responders ourselves, and we have a lot of training, including peer support, assist, which is anti-suicide training, and a whole host of different courses. I actually teach the resilience course on as well. So it's had a really great impact. Like I said, currently we've taken over 4,000 calls. We're now expanding. We're in Alberta. The goal is to expand across the entire country because there is such a need.
Incredible.
Yeah, and there's so many amazing people with such heart and such commitment, into serving that community, because we've all been through it.
Yeah.
We've all experienced it. But this isn't. I just see that there's such a need in society, like for people to like regulate and be balanced so that they can navigate the challenges in the crazy world that we're living in.
I think we get so used to living with the voice in our head, living with that we just start to assume that that's how things are, that's how life is, and that's who we are. And we just are like, well, that's how things are, and that's how I'm going to be. And you don't realize until you kind of start to go on this journey, I'll
Yeah,
call it, that you're like,
yeah,
oh, I can change how I look at things. I can change what I do. I can change. And so I think, I forget who says it, but there's that saying, it's like, you're not a tree. Like you can change anytime you want. You can move, shift, you can do anything. But it's crazy how we don't see that. And I think you just get so used to being one way or seeing things in one way. But what you're doing is incredible. It's amazing how many lives you've been able to impact through the organization. It's just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I'm truly grateful to be in this space. Like I've refound my purpose and my passion again for serving others. And it's funny you mentioned that, about being in our heads. There was a National Science Foundation study in 2005 that looked at, the over approximately 60,000 thoughts on average that everybody has per day.
Yeah.
And statistically, they show that 85% of those thoughts are negative,
Hmm.
and 95% of those thoughts are repetitive, meaning they happen each and every day. So this is what's going on. No wonder our outcomes, our thoughts create our reality. That's
Yeah.
all the great avatars, and Jesus said it, Buddha said it, Krishna said it. We create our world with
Yeah.
our thoughts. And so it's no wonder we're so out of balance and so stressed. And they also found that 85% of what we worry about never actually happens.
I
So that's
know.
statistically. So it's crazy that, we're not even aware of this. It's just running constantly.
Yeah.
So when you recognize that there are different ways of doing things and a different outlook or different perspectives or different knowledge available to you to, like, because you can create whatever it is you want.
Hmm.
It just takes willingness. It takes the understanding that there is pathways for you to, you know, for you to shift and change and create
Yeah,
this beautiful world that.
I agree. I feel like when you were talking, there was a couple key parts though. One was there was this moment almost of like acceptance, which I think is so true because you can't change something if you don't accept where you are. So you sort of came up against this like do or die sort of situation, literally, and you accepted it and then you made a decision. And I think there's a critical point there about like accepting where you are and then deciding. Because I recognize that in my personal journey as well. And I think maybe a lot of us don't accept where we're at, or we don't give ourselves the kick in the butt of that. No, I'm deciding to do something else and to do something differently. And I'm not happy where I am and I want to change. And that is a big part of it, right?
Hmm. I found that whatever you resist, you strengthen.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So,
So I
and
know whatever you resist persists.
that's right. And,
Yeah.
and, and there's so much power in acceptance.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're accepting your circumstances as being something that you can't change,
Exactly.
but acceptance is so important. This
Yeah.
is where I'm at, and this is not maybe where I want to be.
Hmm.
Maybe I want to be here. How do I bridge that gap? How do I
Hmm.
get from here to there? And there's a pathway to follow. There's multiple pathways to follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Yeah,
it
my
has
my
to
journey
start
was a
with
little
acceptance.
different than yours, but it's similar in the same way that I needed to get into my body, and it wasn't until I started. So I think if they also follow me on Instagram, know I talk a lot about and do a lot of like physical exercise and stuff, and
Yeah,
that's part of the way that I connect with the body and
same here.
listen to it and pay attention. Yeah, I think a lot of my clients, same sort of thing. Like it's an important part of the process, and if they're not doing it, I can see it in some of our conversations. I'm like, you need to be able to
Yeah.
move the blocked emotions out of the body because we know emotions get stored in the body. There's all kinds of stuff. It's an important practice. What I would like to know from you is if somebody's listening and they'd like to work with you or talk to you, like who do you work with? What do you do? If anybody's interested, how does that look like for them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on my website and reach out to me through there, consciousrevolutioncoaching.ca.
I'll put the link in the
Yeah,
description.
wonderful. Um, I'm actually starting a men's circle here in Barrie. I've been a part of one for the last couple of years, and it's been a great experience. It's been a part of. So I do regular breathwork sessions. All of that stuff will be posted on the website
Sure.
or linked, through my various social media accounts, which I'm just learning to get a handle on now
Yeah.
because it's kind of
Yeah.
all new to me. But
Can
I
help
do I
you.
do something pretty regularly. Actually, I've got a session this Friday up in Collingwood, which is every 2 weeks to a month. It's transformational breathwork using 9D technology, and what I found is that like that's a big game changer.
Mm,
That's like a year of therapy in an hour session or an hour and a half. It's a
amazing.
great way of like bypassing the conscious mind, going deep into subconscious and getting the somatic release of all this stored tension and mental and emotional blockages. It's really something. When I started doing that, was another game changer for me,
Mhm.
and just to be part of that and to share that with people and see what their response has been, like truly transformational.
What's the difference between that? Can you describe that more?
Yeah, certainly. 90 breath work is like a combination of somatic breathing, which is like this conscious connected breathing combined with like sound frequency technology, which is pretty mind blowing. So you're
Yeah.
just laying on a mat, you've got headphones on, you're doing the breathing, and you're taken through this amazing journey. Using like everything from solfeggio tones to binaural beats to 432 hertz to guided vocal coaching,
Mhm.
subliminal messaging, creating this incredible sound experience that like literally within minutes can take you out of your conscious mind, which is such a blessing.
Yeah.
Not to be stuck there, to go deep in and to be guided through this as a way of releasing, stored traumas, all kinds of things. So each journey is kind of targeted towards a certain theme,
Mhm.
and I've had just such incredible feedback from that. I've worked with special forces guys from JTF2 who, have been on their own healing drama or journeys from PTSD,
Hmm.
a lot of first responders, and just anybody if you're in this life,
Yeah.
you've experienced some trauma, some events or whatever that are really, no one teaches you how to process, and
Yeah.
they just automatically get stored in the body. So being able to release them and have like this profound shift is something you have to experience.
I know, I couldn't agree more because that was where it started for me. I was started meditating in the morning, which I think I need to, people even just to understand how to start meditating, because most
Mhm.
professionals who I talk to, it's the same sort of conversation. It's like, well, I've tried it. And I'm like, I remember my first time trying it. I sat down and within like 2 seconds, my mind was like, this is a waste of time. You have so much, you have so much you need to be doing. And then the to-do list like started like flashing by.
Your
And
brain does not like not being in control.
no, no. And so then I agreed with it. I was like, oh, you're absolutely right. This is a complete waste of my time. And then I was off and doing something else. And then years later, obviously, I gave it another chance. But this time I did it differently. I did it instead of putting an expectation that my mind was supposed to be silent.
Mhm.
I did a guided meditation where it was more about learning the technique to observe the thoughts, like to allow and accept them. And so I didn't realize, I think a lot of, and I guess maybe I didn't even know this, but when I heard meditation, I thought it meant sit in silence. Like they were an equivalent. And it's like, that's not the practice. That's not
That's
what
not
it
the
is.
purpose.
And, I think that might deter a lot of people from even trying meditation because you automatically feel like you're failing because the first time you sit there and close your eyes, what
The
something's gonna,
brain kicks in.
yes, yes.
And it's
So
got a whole story like, why are you wasting your time? Why are you doing this? When
yeah,
I did my 10-day silent meditation retreat, like I didn't know what I was getting into.
no.
But, the first 5 days, I wanted to run screaming from the place. Like, I'm like, let me out of here. I can't do this anymore. I can't. But that was the mind. You really start to realize how much control your mind has over you. And it does not like relinquishing that control.
Yeah.
So, like being silent, not talking to anybody, not journaling, there's no technology, there's no cell phones, there's nothing. 10 days of silence. So you're guided through the meditations. But I got to a point, like I'm here, I made the commitment, I don't care how painful, and it was more painful than military boot camp when I went through
Oh
boot camp.
my gosh.
So it
Yeah.
was that challenging. But
Yeah.
when I got to about day 6, I'm like, there was this gap in thoughts. There was
Ah,
this slowing down of everything, and then just being in that present moment without anything going on. And I was
yeah.
like, wow, this is something. Like if I could find the off switch in my brain, I would turn it off, turn it on when I needed to use it, and I just go back to being like
See,
peaceful.
do you know why this is such a beautiful conversation? And I'm going to highlight this because I think it's it might give people a different way of looking at something. A lot of us, what we do when we're looking for that off switch, because our
Mhm.
mind is driving us nuts, because we go to have a shower and it just starts chattering about all the stuff, and then we don't feel good, or we go to lay down in bed and it won't stop, or we wake up in the middle of the night and then it's still going and we just can't get it quiet. A lot of us think our initial reaction is, I need a vacation. I need a break. I need to, and it's to change our external environment. And it could be our significant other that we're putting the blame and the focus on. It could be like, it could be anything. A lot of the time we think we need to get away from our work or whatever it is. Or like I have clients who the only way to get silence or peace is to like put their life at risk in some form of crazy hobby,
Yeah.
whether it's like race car driving, surfing, like something that takes your full physical attention and mental attention in order to shut it off. And so that certainly it works for them, but maybe we don't need a life defying, did I say that right? A life like
Yeah.
threatening kind
Yeah.
of situation in order for that to happen. There is another way, and it's a much more sustainable way where you don't need to fly across or go do some crazy expensive, but it's that practice. And
And that
did
only happens in the moment
yeah,
that you're doing it. You go
right.
back to,
Yes.
how often can you spend your time like on a vacation or what have you. The problem is you take yourself with you whatever environment you're in.
Yes.
And but
Yeah.
that's true, like if you're a rock climber, like any
Yeah.
you know um mishandled or whatever can result in like catastrophic So you have to be fully attention. You don't need to do those things to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And the more we train ourselves to be in that kind of state, and what do most people do? A lot of people drink. You know, I
Yeah.
was I was
Another
that
way
I
to
was that
numb
guy
the,
too,
yeah.
because alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, and it
Yes.
gives you an immediate state change. It numbs down everything, and that's why so many people are addicted to it.
Yes.
I beat a 40-year addiction through this training. So
Amazing. That's incredible.
yeah, it's been such a godsend.
Will that be part of the men's group that you're doing? Like, is that without get because we didn't touch on that too much,
Yeah.
but if somebody's interested in joining, one, do they have to be in Barrie? Can they be anywhere? Because most of my listeners are worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah,
So,
I'm definitely thinking about doing something online because this is the world we live in now. Everything's through Zoom, and it's a great way of connecting with people around the world. But I'm going to be hosting in a space, a local yoga space here. But my goal is to do like have multiple groups going on because there's such a need. And I mean, just to discuss what it means, it's very confusing for men these days,
yeah.
right? Our roles have changed, the expectations in society, just the same
Yes.
for women. We're all kind of like, we don't have stable ground anymore. We're all
Yes.
kind of stuck in like, how does a man show up in the world today? How's a
Mhm.
woman supposed to show up in the world today? They're sacred feminine, they're sacred masculine.
Yes.
We need to embrace those qualities that you know, make us men, like better human beings, better fathers, better partners,
Yeah.
better members of our community. So this is just the men's circle is a way of getting there and having that discussion with people.
There's so
And
much power in community.
oh, there
And
is. My gosh, we've gotten away from community,
I
right?
know. Yeah.
So, and that's a big problem. We're we're drowning in information and lacking in wisdom.
Yeah. If you're
So,
looking for someone to lead a women's one, if there's interest that comes, let me know and I would have.
oh, I'm sure there is. Oh, absolutely, there is because we all need this, and that doesn't mean it's like we're mutually exclusive. Like we're meant to be together. We're
Yeah.
meant to have this incredible, profound connection between men and women, and support one another
Yeah.
in the fact that we bring something different to the table.
I
So
think it's amazing. I think that's so needed because a lot of the like people who I speak to and who I work with, like the relationship piece, like even the intimate relationship piece is crucial for how especially men feel in everything.
yeah,
And I think there's a disconnect maybe about how women understand how that actually impacts men.
mhm.
I'm doing a separate research with a bunch of women that I'm hopefully can compile and put together, but that's for future. But I
So,
think that's amazing. Any tips you would share with somebody who's looking for support? Anything you think that could help them? Yeah, just as as an end note to share with them.
yeah, certainly. One I think is just it starts with a recognition, and a self awareness. Without self awareness, we have a tendency to write things off until it becomes critical.
Mhm.
So being aware of where you're at any given time, and if you're struggling, acknowledge that you're struggling, and don't just kind of compartmentalize it or push it aside. Like I said, what you don't deal with will deal with you eventually, and it'll come out in all kinds of ways. It'll come out as a mental health crisis, a physical crisis, because all these the studies are now showing that stress is one of the um, um, precursor events to like all kinds of heart disease, diabetes, like autoimmune disorders have a massive stress has a massive component to that into the
Yeah.
development of these disease processes. But what you can do, is one, first develop that awareness by getting connected to your body. Like if you're feeling off, like if you're feeling, I notice tension in my chest.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm not breathing. I'm
Right.
like right now, all those muscles are getting tight.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about something, or I'm dealing with something, or I'm worried about something. And then all of a sudden that physiological response happens. I'm like, okay, I can deal with this by taking a couple of slow, deep breaths.
Hmm. And then getting curious.
I'm getting curious.
Yeah.
But if I want to relieve that tension right away, all I need is about like less than a minute of breathing to like, okay, all right. So um, I I can share a technique with you guys
Yeah, that would be amazing.
that
Please.
anybody can use at any time. And the beautiful thing about this is that you can use it anytime, anywhere, in the moment that you need it. So anytime you're feeling stressed, what happens? You get that physiological response. Cortisol, stress hormones start getting released in the body.
Yeah.
So this is a way of interrupting that stress response,
Okay,
and
incredible.
bringing yourself back into a state of balance. We do this for a couple of reasons. Maybe I'll just explain a little bit about the
Sure.
technique, what it does first. So it's called heart focused breathing. And the reason we focus on the heart is that anytime you pay attention to a specific body part, you're creating measurable changes in that area. So
Hmm.
when we focus on the heart, what it does is it shifts our heart rhythm patterns. So if we look at something called heart rate variability, so this pattern, this communication that's going between the brain and the heart is sending the majority of the information to the brain. So when we focus on our heart, we're creating this balanced connection, which is emotional self-regulation. It's the part of the brain that helps us to regulate. So when we're doing this and we're focusing our attention here, it has a tendency to bring these into this beautiful sine wave pattern, as opposed to stress, which is this dysregulated signal. It's our autonomic nervous system out of balance. It's like driving with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. So
Okay.
breath work is a way of bringing that back into balance. And the other thing then, when we focus on the heart and our breath, it brings our attention away from the thoughts that are producing a lot of the stress.
Hmm.
So it's really, really simple. If you want to try it with me, I'd
Yes,
be happy to
please. I
share.
would love to. Yes.
Okay, great. So start by either closing your eyes or adopting a soft gaze downwards, and start paying attention to your breath. Start by taking a couple of slow, deep inhalations through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, and just relaxing into your space. And as you continue on with that breath, focus your attention in the area of your heart. Imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart or chest area, breathing a little slower and deeper than usual. And if your mind begins to wander, just bring it gently back to your breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just bring your attention back to your room and your space. You know, it's funny when somebody told me that that simple technique would change my life. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. Really? Just another breath? Well, when I started paying attention when I really, really needed it and then developed this practice, it was a game changer. It was a
Yeah.
game changer in my own healing journey. So,
It's
yeah.
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've actually been doing I've done all kinds of different types of
Yeah.
meditations,
Yeah.
and that version for me is like one of the most impactful ones, I think. And there's something about focusing on the heart. I had even tried one before where you imagine like a spark starting in your heart and it
Mm-hmm.
starts to spread and spread. And I think about it spreading to my family and to my town, and then it goes around the whole world. And I just leave those meditations just so happy,
Yeah.
which may sound, crazy, but
No,
it's
it's not. Like,
so
can I share something with
powerful.
you?
Yes.
There's something called through HeartMath, it's called the Global Coherence Initiative. And they
Okay.
set up these monitoring stations around the world, right? And they monitor the Earth's magnetic field. And so when I talked about that heart's magnetic field, what is encoded in that field is information, and that information is our emotional states, where we're at on our emotional level. So when we focus on our heart and we start doing this meditation and we focus that outwards, and we do this as a global community, we'll get together some multiple times a month or on special occasions or whatever. And these networking groups around the world will get together and meditate and feel in peace and sending peace and love out into the world.
Mhm.
It actually, these monitoring stations pick that up, and it raises the frequency and vibration of the entire planet. So
Yes.
what we're doing is one of the questions I ask myself every day now is, when I'm not feeling where I need to be or whatever, when am I feeding the field?
Yeah.
So, and
Oh,
how is that field affecting my kids,
yes.
my friends, the partner, the people around me? Like, there's so much power in this.
I love that. How am I feeding the field? I
Or what
love
am I
that.
feeding the
What
field?
am I
Yeah,
feeding the field? Yeah,
yeah,
like that ripple effect. What's the ripple
absolutely.
effect
It
of me and
changes.
my Can I
Yeah,
share one thing that's just made me this has made me remember this? And I think it was in one of my coaching sessions. So when I was getting certified, so I was one of the trainers is Chloe Madonis. So she works heavily in family therapy, and I'm pretty sure it was her. Hopefully, I'm not misspeaking, but she shared that one of the things that you want to do if you're having a tough conversation, and they said all you have to do is have the couple who are talking to each other just talk, but put your hand on your heart.
yeah,
And when you do that, you're less likely to be as combative to like all these different things because you're remembering your heart. And when you remember your heart, you're like, well, why am I having this conversation? Why, what do I want? What do I, and it comes from a like a more loving place as opposed to, yeah. So I'm like, it just made me think of that. But that focus on your heart can really shift how you show up and how you interact and how you feel. Yeah, it's
absolutely.
beautiful. Thank you. Dan, it was so good to have you on. I will share in the comment section how to get a hold of you and any other
Awesome.
details. So I'll put that all in the podcast. And for anybody who wants to try that meditation, please make sure you are not driving a car. Please go home, save the episode, and give it a listen
You can
later.
actually do it in the car. You can do it with your eyes open. You
Oh,
don't have to, as you get better at doing this, you
yeah.
do it in conversation, you do it before, during, after an event. You can do it anywhere at any time.
Right. Shifting your focus, focusing on the
Shifting your
heart and
focus
your
into
breath.
your heart and breathing. Yeah,
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. We love quick tips that we can just do even in the office, right? We're like
absolutely.
anything that, yeah, amazing. Okay, so great to have you, Dan. Thank you so
It
much.
was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.